Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we will be learning about the figures of speech. Now, let us look at each of the figure of speech in detail. The first figure of speech is simile. The second type of figure of speech is metaphor. The third is personification. The fourth figure of speech is rhyme. The fifth figure of speech is imagery. And the sixth figure of speech is alliteration. There are more figures of speech in English, but I am not mentioning about them here as these six are the most commonly and widely used figures of speech. Now let us learn about each of them in detail. The first one is simile. It is a figure of speech. It occurs when two essentially dissimilar objects or concepts come. It is always compared with one another. We can understand that a certain line is a simile through the use of like or as. To understand more better, let us look at two examples. A glass of cold water. Here we can see that it is compared with one another. The second example, you were as brave as a lion. If you observe this line, you can see that the word as is being used here. By this, we can understand that this line is a simile. Let us move on to the second figure of speech, which is a metaphor. It is a figure of speech. It occurs when a word or a phrase comes to be. It is in an object, activity, or idea which is treated as a metaphor, literally denoting one another. One kind of object or idea is used in place of another to suggest a likeness or analogy between them. The classroom was a zoo. My teacher is a dragon. In these examples, we can see that instead of saying the classroom was very noisy, it is saying that a classroom was a zoo. Instead of saying my teacher was ferocious, the line says my teacher is a dragon. By this, we can see the comparison. Let us move on to the third figure of speech, which is personification. It is a figure of speech in which an idea or thing is given human attributes and or feelings, or it is spoken of as if it were a human. Personification is a common form of metaphor in that human characteristics are attributed to non-human things. We can understand that a line is a personification when we see that a non-human thing is being given the attributes such as feelings, emotions, etc. of a human. To understand this much better, let us look at a few examples. The lightning danced across the sky. Here we all know that lightning is a supernatural substance that is given to us by the nature. Dancing is a human attribute. So the human attribute dancing is given to the natural, that is lightning. Hence, the line lightning danced across the sky is a personification. Rita heard the last piece of pie calling her name. As we read the sentence, we all know that this is something that is never to come. Here we can see that the last piece of pie is calling Rita's name. Calling is a human attribute. The piece of pie is a non-living thing. Hence, we can understand that this line is also a personification. My alarm clock yells at me to get out of bed every morning. If the line said, my alarm clock rings at me, it would be meaningful. But here it says, my alarm clock yells at me. Yelling is a human attribute. Hence, we understand that this line also is a personification. Let us move on to the next figure of speech, which is rhyme. Rhyme is a popular literary device in which the repetition of the same or similar sounds occurs in two or more words. Words that end with the same vowel sound but have different spellings are known as rhyme. To understand better, let us look at a few examples. Bright and night, day and pray, light and white. Through these examples, if we observe, we can see the repetition of the same or similar sound that occur in between two or more words. It can end with the same letters or it can also sound the same. Let us look at the next figure of speech, which is imagery. Imagery can also be called as a literary device that refers to the use of the uses of figurative language. It is used to evoke a sensory experience or to create a picture with words for a reader. In imagery, it is a very vast topic, but I have summarized it so that you may understand it in a very clear way. It can also be understood by utilizing effective descriptive language and figures of speech. For writers to appeal to a reader's senses of sight, taste, smell, touch, and sound, as well as internal emotion and feelings. Therefore, imagery is not limited to visual presentations or mental images, but also includes physical sensations and internal emotions. Let us learn about each of them in a short yet descriptive and very detailed way. Visual. It appeals to sense of sight through description of color, light, size, pattern, etc. Auditory. It appeals to sense of hearing or sound by including melodic sounds, silence, harsh noises, and even onomatopoeia. Gustatory. Gustatory appeals to sense of the taste through describing whether something is sweet, salty, savory, spicy, or sour. Tactile. It appeals to the sense of touch by describing how something physically feels, such as its temperature, texture, or other sensation. Olfactory. It appeals to sense of smell by describing something's fragrance or odor. Kinesthetic. It appeals to a reader's sense of motion or movement through describing the sensations of movements or the movements of an object. Organic. It appeals to and communications internal sensations, feeling, and emotions such as fatigue, thirst, fear, love, loneliness, despair, etc. Let us move on to the sixth figure of speech, which is alliteration. It is a figure of speech in which the same sound repeats in a group of words. Alliteration is when two or more words that start with the same sound are used repeatedly in a phrase or a sentence. The repeated sound creates the alliteration, not the same letter. To understand it in brief, we can say that alliteration is kind of like the tongue twisters. To understand much better, let us look at a few examples. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Sheep should sleep in a shed. I hope you have understood the figures of speech. Let us meet in another educational video. Till then, stay tuned and happy learning.